Herschel is walking you through the ALM, I would still not work on your computer. Just pay attention to what he's doing. It's critical for you to understand the concept.
So understand the concept, and you're gonna get plenty of chance to go through the exercises. And this week and next week, I think we're gonna focus on the ALM catching. So what are test cases you're gonna write? What you created so far, you're gonna input into the ALM, go through the cycle of testing using the ALM tool. Okay, so that's the whole purpose. So make sure you guys have the test cases created before you use the tool. Otherwise, you're gonna struggle because you're not gonna be able to write the test cases and then input into the ALM and go through the testing cycle. Okay, so I encourage you guys to do that. Create the test cases. I think we talked about some of the topics, so it's just very quick, and then we're going to dive into the actual ALM side of things. Let's just talk briefly what this tool is. But ALM stands for Application Lifecycle Management, right? We talked about the overall managing the software development lifecycle, and it's one of the popular tools from HP. HP is a company, by the way. So just in case if you guys don't know. Hewlett-Packard is a company, just like Microsoft is another company. So they make that software and they basically own it. But essential goal is to integrate all the parts and pieces of the development lifecycle. Okay. And let's take a look at who does what with the ALM. Right. So we start out with the project manager, right? The planning process. That's the first thing. So the project manager can do the project planning using the ALM, basically. The second guy is a business analyst. So I talked about creating the requirements. So you need to have the requirement, so they can create the requirements right there with the tool, so that anybody else can access it, those requirements. Then the developers. So developers can do certain things. I haven't seen any developers using ALM in my real life. I mean, I'm a BMW client and nobody uses ALM. That's what developer does. Okay. So we have requirements created here, and the testers create the test cases and everything else, and then execution. But the developers, I haven't seen any developers using the ALM. Okay. But obviously, they can do certain things, source control, the code versioning, and certain things using the ALM. The testers, as a testers or quality assurance folks, you're probably going to be able to do a lot more things. You can do manual testing, obviously. So you need to understand the difference. Okay, this is a life cycle management tool. It's not a testing tool. Okay, so whatever manual testing test cases you created, you're gonna input in there. The only thing you're gonna do is you're gonna still execute. You still have to execute manually. Okay, it's not like a click of a button. The test case is done. You still have to execute follow the same step, whatever you created, and execute the test cases. So manual testing. Now there are two more things it can do: load testing and automation testing. But again, those are scripts created outside ALM, and this tool, you can execute those scripts by click of a button, but somebody has to write the scripts using the UFT or load runner, performance testing tool, outside of ALM. You just basically put a link there and they can execute it. So it's not like ALM will allow you to do automation testing, okay? It's just executing the script, but somebody has to create that outside, not within the ALM. Alright, the product owners, these are basically business users. This term is used for the agile development a lot. Product owners, instead of business users, they are calling the product owners. That's the term. Okay. So if you are working on the agile project, they are the one actually feeding the requirements to the business analyst, and they are entering it and everything else. So they can access the ALM to see the progress and everything else. They can run the reports, see how many defects being created, how good the quality of the product is, and everything. So they can do, and the communication, so they can see visually, okay, what's the progress, and communicate to any developer or anything. So those are essentially the roles within the ALM. Different people basically can do different things. And I think we talked about this one. It's a centralized repository of everything, right? So that's the essential goal of the ALM. That's the reason people use that. So let's talk about the ALM side of things. What is really ALM contains, right? I think the next slide is this one, probably. So this is what you guys have, okay? So this is you guys are accessing our server here. So that's our server side of things. It does have its own database. That's where we created users, and whatever you're going to input, it's going to be stored in the database. Okay. But this is the client that you have installed on your machine. So you are only thing you are doing is you are accessing our servers through the client, basically. So it's a client-server type of architecture. So you have a client that is accessing the server, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Not that that you're gonna care probably when you go to the real world. You wanna see how you can use it. But this is there so that if you have to use it, or if you're gonna end up as a ALM administrator someday, then you can basically follow this. All right. So let's see. So let's understand before we dive into the tool, how does the ALM work? So let's actually go to the one slide I think I have. So we'll talk about this slide a little bit. Understand the terminology. Because when you are working with the tool like ALM, you have to understand the terminology, and then only you can use this tool. So product. So in our case, Alphalon can be a product, basically. It's a software product, basically. Essentially, what it is a software product. So I can write here as Alphalon. Okay. Alphalon product. All right. So let's understand the release. What is really a release? So Alphalon, in order to understand, let's take a look at the Alphalon feature. So we have security, we have lender administration, we have the user admin, all those admin. Plus we have dealer functionality where they can submit the credit apps and whatnot. Right. So let's say my timeline is to have this release, basically this product delivered over the 8 months, basically, or next 8 months. But I can't deliver, I have only 3 resources, basically 3 software developers working on that. And when they, just like you guys provide the estimates, right? So they look at the requirements and they're gonna come back and say, oh, it's gonna take us probably 2 years to do this. Or maybe 10 months to do the, build this. Based on that, they're gonna carve out the important features, basically. And they're going to bundle those features. Okay, let's go with the login feature first because it's needed. Then let's build the dealer management and application functionality. We'll build the admin side of things later on. So they're going to group the features. So in the when they group the features, they're going to pick out the what requirements or modules they're going to build first. So here they're going to build 3 modules, and here they're going to build 2 modules. So when they group it, you can call them a release, basically, one release. And the second release will include all the admin features, basically. Okay? So it's just a bundling of the feature so that they can manage it a little bit better. And they might hire a couple of more developers to work on another release or something like that, basically. So that's one of the other term that goes in is the scope. So whatever feature you are building, that becomes part of the scope. So we're going to focus only on delivering security, lender approval, and dealer application. So that becomes my scope, basically, as part of the release. Those are the only things I'm going to worry about. And that's the only thing that goes in the production first. Then you're going to start working on the release number 2 that goes in the production after you deliver this release. Is everybody clear on the release? Okay. It's just a grouping of the functionality that you want to deliver at the end. Okay, so within these 3 items that we are doing, login, dealer, and credit apps, now within that they can break it down further. They can say, I'm going to have 2 cycles. So first cycle, we're going to build the login functionality page, and the second cycle, I'm going to build the dealer application side of things. So you can break down release into cycles. Cycle 1 will be delivered at the end of April, and the next one will be delivered at the end of June. So that would be the second one. Now, requirements is your fundamental building block, right? When we are talking about the software. So within the cycle 1, for the security side of things, you have probably 5 different requirements. You're going to support admin side of things, super user, you're going to support the dealer user, you're going to support the lender user, whatever, and whatever they can do here. So all the requirements, and you guys are familiar with that, right? Test cases. Each requirement you probably going to have 10 different test cases. But this is the flow. So in the ALM, you're going to configure a product. When somebody first configures the software to be used for the lifecycle management, we're going to configure our flow as a project or product, and then we're going to have a release identified, basically. And within that, you're going to have cycle 1, cycle 2, something like that, and then you're going to have requirements created for each cycle. Now, why this one is needed? It is required for traceability. Okay. So if you really look at it, our flow release, test 1, test cases, down to the defect, basically. You can trace back everything to the product, basically, in the software. We'll see, I mean, once I show that, basically, it becomes more clear. But that is a whole, kind of like a different terminology for using the ALM. Okay. Alright, so once you got the terminology, is everybody clear on this one? Okay. Alright, so let's move on to the real thing now. Alright, so pretty much you guys seen the screen, right? So once you install the software, you are here. Don't touch the computers here. Okay. Let's just want to keep reminding you. Let's focus on here. What are different things? Now the login would be your first name or whatever is on the card, basically. Okay. So that should be your login. And password is training for everybody. Okay. So it's nothing expensive. The first thing you're gonna do is authenticate. Okay. So it's gonna go and say what projects you're gonna have access to. And let's understand this domain and project. So we talked about the product. Product is our flow. Here it's a project as well. Now the domain, typically it's a financial domain or marketing domain. Different companies have different domain setup, and they might have multiple projects running underneath that. But here we just have default domain for everybody. But you're gonna see different domains. And depending on that, they will grant you access whether you are working on marketing side of things or finance or anything. Okay. But those are the 2 things, and then you're gonna log in. It's a straightforward process. All right, let's see if it lets me in. Okay, so once you log in, now as I said, I mean it's a life cycle management tool, right? It's a life cycle management tool. So, but there are several different things here. Okay. As a tester, you're not going to have access to everything in the real world. The dashboard, this is where Dilip talked about some of the reporting side of things, management report, defect logs, and all those things. I'll walk you through a couple of examples. But the requirements. Let's start with the requirements first. So requirements on the left side, I'm going to click there and see if it pulls up the requirements out of there. The way it works is it has typically business analyst will create it. You guys won't create it. So we're not gonna. I'm just gonna show you overview of this one. See what it is. But it's pretty just like Windows folder structure management, right? You can create the folders here. So here the business analyst is organizing the requirements into functional and non-functional within this folder. So I have this folder, requirements folder, and within that I have functional and non-functional folders. Okay. And within that there are typically they organize the information by module. Okay. So here we have different modules: login, dealer management, user management, lender management, loan calculator. You're pretty much gonna see in the real world similar things. Okay. Now these are just folders. Okay, all these symbols are folder symbols, just like Windows file folder. Now within that, you're gonna have new requirements created. So let's take a look at one of the requirements. So requirement has a description, right? All dealers shall be assigned, blah, blah, blah. And then you can put input any other requirement information. So essentially what we have done here is you have a requirements document and we're just going to copy and paste basically here. There is a tool that can take the input, but then you have the requirement from the in a specific format, basically certain columns and all those things. That's what we typically do. Okay, all the business analysts, they write the requirements in an Excel format where they're just going to import it right there. Okay, so nobody goes in and manually creates the requirements. But this is how it will look, this type of requirement. Let's pull up one. Okay, so when you are creating they are creating the requirement, the red fields are required. Okay, the red one requirement type is functional, so you can select whether it's a functional or non-functional, or what are the load, basically performance testing or anything. But typically, if it's a functionality related, they're going to create as a functional requirement. You can play around when you get a chance. The second thing would be the author. So here, anybody is in the system. So typically, whoever is creating the requirement is going to populate the default, basically some of the information like time and the reviewed is an important piece, right? Whether somebody has reviewed the requirement or not, they can basically once they send out email, okay, I have requirements ready. Why don't you guys go and review it? And then they get everybody's feedback, they revise it, and mark it, say it's complete, review complete or something like that. So it's a review. Now I was talking about the target cycle, right? So here you can have cycle 1, cycle 2. When you basically, essentially what it is, it allows you to group the requirements when you are, depending on when you are delivering the requirement. You can also attach the documents. So you can have one simple requirement, loan calculator module, and you can plug in the whole Word document right there, basically. But that's some people, some companies do that because they don't want to create the requirements individually. Requirement 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, like that. So they just attach the document right there. So you can easily pull any file from your system and plug in right there. Let's see what other things are important here. So that I can, for the requirement standpoint, yes, here on this particular view, it's going to show the status of the requirement. Okay, this is an important part for you guys when we go through the creating your test cases. Here it shows coverage status. So whether the requirement is covered with any test cases or not. So let's say somebody forgot to create the test case that ties back to this requirement. then obviously it's gonna show as not covered. And the requirement guy can say, oh, why there are no test cases for this one? And when you run it, execute it, it's gonna change the status to not completed. When you actually pass the test case, it will say, yep, requirement passed test case. See if I have any example, yeah, like this particular one, it shows passed. So that means what our developers implemented, went through the cycle for testing, and that requirement is good. But other ones are not executed or not covered. So we'll see that how that's going to work as far as the testing goes. But I just wanted to glance over this requirements piece quickly, because you're not going to create it. So here you're probably not going to be able. You can create it, but don't even mess around with the requirements tab. Okay. We're going to focus on the testing side of things for you guys. But I just wanted to show you quickly that this is how it works on the requirement. But feel free to go and take a look at it, but don't change anything. Okay, that's the only thing for the requirements. And the simple thing would be the easy to create is get familiar with the top navigation here. So this one says new folder. The second one would say new requirement. So if I click over there, it's going to pop up the empty box with some default information, and then you're going to fill out the requirements details there. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the actually testing side of things. Assume that we are creating, we are working through the logging. We'll start with the simple one. Okay. So let's see how we're going to input our test case that we created in there. So all you guys gotta spend time is in the testing tab. Okay. There are several different things here, but the test plan is that this is where you're gonna create all your test cases. And test lab is this is where you're gonna start execution of the test cases. So let's take a look at the test plan first. So I'm gonna go there, test plan. Yes, one more thing. We created a student folder. Okay. So this is where your playground, whatever you call it. This is where you can create your own test cases and whatever 6 or 10, whatever you create. Okay. Go ahead and create it. But just for the example, let's go and create one new one. So as I said, you can create a new folder or new test set. So let me go and create a new folder so that you guys know its feature is available. And let me just put as my folder. So it created as a Herschel folder. Now, whatever folder you select and you press on this one, this is where it's going to create it. So if I created a new folder, selected that one and create a new folder, it will create under subject directly. Okay. But good thing is you can move that folder around. If I have to move it, I can do that, basically put it under MS and say, are you sure you want to move the folder? Okay. And I can move it over there without any issue. And it will move all the things that you created and put it back on that folder. Alright, so that's the folder. Let's talk about the test set, new test. So all the test cases going to translate into new tests basically for you guys, or test. So I'm going to create a new test, and this is what is going to pop up. Now, let's see what we have here. So you have this test case, right? This is what you created. Typically, the title maps out to the test name over here, so that I can easily recognize what kind of test it is. Okay, and then you have the description here. So if you have summary information, if you filled out any summary, test summary, then you can copy paste it from there to there, or you have to type it in if you still have it on menu. Okay, so this is where you can have those copy paste right there. Another thing is designer. The type here is important. It's a manual testing, so make sure you leave it on manual. Okay. If you change to other type, then you're probably not going to be able to. You might run into issues. Okay. Just leave it. Select the manual. Creation date. You can select the date or leave it blank. Only thing required is this red text. Okay, those are the only fields required. Yeah, so we will go through that. Okay, so here you are just creating some basic test case. So attachment. So if you have further test data, maybe Excel or something, you can just basically pull point and load it up right there, basically. And that's typically for the credit application or something like that, like bigger test data. You can just attach right there and just say in the summary that you are please refer to this file for test data, something. Okay. So again, it works like any other attachment, email attachment, right? You click on this button and it will pop up and you basically attach the file over there. All right. Okay, so where are my test steps, right? So first I need to say click on OK. All right. So let's click on OK, see what it does. Okay, so it's gonna pop up another dialog box, and here what I'm gonna do is I'm going to. There are several different things here. So I have details. This is what I filled out in the first pop-up. Then my test steps will go in right in the design steps. So I come here, right now it's blank. So let's go back and see what we are doing here. Now if you have precondition, basically there is no way you can put the precondition or postcondition, okay, in the tool. So you probably want to put it under the description, okay, those precondition and postcondition. So you can mark it as a precondition and postcondition right there. If I go to details, and you can just say it here. This is a precondition, because there is no separate place to put the date. Okay, it doesn't map one to one. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't map one to one. And if you have postcondition, you can stick it in right there. All right, so that whoever is accessing your test case, they understand, okay, these are precondition and postcondition that you are putting in. Let's go back to the design steps, because this is where you're going to be specifying all the steps. So here I have first step is in the browser, type in the URL and all those things. So again, get familiar with, when you get a chance, or start working with the tool, or just hover over the menu items, see what they are. Okay, convert to the component. This is refresh. This one is delete, basically. But for the test step, this is the next step. Okay, new step. So I'm going to click on there, and I'm going to copy and paste, basically. And you need to have expected result. Okay. Now one thing you notice, there is no actual results here, right? Because at this stage you are still designing your test case, so that's the reason you don't have actual result here. So let's take a look at it. All right, so let's go one. And if you have, again, if you have attachment, you can do that. So now you guys know, right? I mean, we are going through so many things. If you have 10 different steps here, think about the time that it's going to take you to create, basically convert to the, from the paper or basically from here, putting directly into the tool. So 1, 2, let's just go quickly. Click OK. And I think I have only 2. Hey, that's a good thing. Okay, so where does the test data go? There are a couple of places you can put the data. You can have parameters. You can stick in your test data, or typically we just put it in the step itself. Okay. So if you are your data here, I can just type it in right there, username and password in the second step, and you just basically. I can just copy paste the username and password right there. So that goes in the test data goes there. So tool doesn't match with the templates sometimes. Okay. So that's why you have to do some manual work right there. And anything else? I mean, that's pretty much it, right? I mean, for this test case, I mean, this is what we have. So now you're ready to actually go and execute your test case. Any question? Let's take a look at one more item, what these things are. So attachments is attachment. Okay, this is where you can attach the files. Test configuration, typically, I mean, I don't use that much. The test configuration, if you want to simulate the different users for the same test, you can do that. But there is no practical use. I mean, I haven't found. But the requirement coverage, how does it know it ties back to the particular requirement, right? So that's where we want to see the impact. So as soon as I click on requirement coverage, I don't see anything over there. It's not tied to any requirement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go select requirement. I'm going to click on that. And it's going to pop up this on the right side. And I need to find the requirement. And this one is tied back to the login. And it says user need to be able to log in. And now it says duplicate coverage, which is okay because I already have other things tied back. But user need to be able to log in, right? So this is how you're gonna create the requirement traceability, basically. So you have to manually go and tell for each test case which requirement this test case is created for. Okay, it's not automatic. It's a tool. It will do whatever you tell it to do. Okay, so you have to make sure you tie the requirement under requirement coverage, basically, under the test case, under the test plan. All right, so at this point, my test case, let's go back and see what we created. So I have validate super user login test case created for my requirement. Is everybody clear? It looks straightforward, right? Does it make sense? It's pretty much whatever you are doing, you are just converting to a digital format, that's all. But you still need to think through how you're going to create the test cases, okay? That's the important part. Tool, you are just inputting the data. That's all you are doing. You guys want to go and execute? Let me just show you quickly how do you execute. It gets you some concept and we'll work through some of the other things. Alright, so execution is under the test lab. Okay? So let's understand one more item before we go to the test lab. So we created the requirement here. We have requirements and we are looking at the test case, right? In that diagram that I showed you guys earlier. Okay. Now this thing is happening under test plan. This is requirement tab. Requirement tab, this is test plan tab. Alright, when you are talking about actually the execution, which is test lab. Okay. You can't execute the test case simply just because you have a test case. Okay. When we execute certain things, you will have to logically group that. All the test cases that you want to execute together. So think about it. If I have a login functionality, right, and I probably have 4 or 5 test cases for the login, positive, negative, whatever I'm going to do. I'm not going to pass or fail only one test case, that requirement. I want to logically group that and execute together, make sure that whole functionality is working properly. And the logical grouping of all 4 or 5 test cases, you can do it using the test set. Okay, so there is a concept called test set. So let's say I have a positive test case, negative test case, and all other things. I'm going to pull all together when I'm executing it into a test set, and then I'm going to execute the test set so that I can execute one by one all 4 or 5 that I need to create. Okay, so this is an important concept. Okay, test set. You're not going to be able to execute directly. Even if you have one test case, you have to create test set and then execute the test set. Okay. So let's take a look at it. So again, you're going to have similar folder structure. And I'm going to create my own folder, Herschel, here because it's not there. let's see how we can do the. Now again, the menu is very similar. So you're gonna have this one, this particular. Get familiar with it, okay? When you get a chance. All right, here I'm going to say login functionality test set. So now any test set that ties back to the login, I can pull that in. Now, if you notice here, that's the only red item is the name. That's all it requires. Okay. So if you don't have anything specific, then you can just ignore everything else. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Alright, so once I create the login test set, which is created here, login functionality test set, now I need to say what tests I want to pull, basically. It's very similar to the requirement coverage. Okay, you're gonna see this select test button. Okay, so let's get familiar with that. So select test is gonna pop up all the test cases that you have, or everybody else has. Okay, it's not gonna show you just yours, for everybody. So you need to find yours. So that's why I organized it here under my name. So let's see if I can find mine, okay? And I'm gonna click on that. And if you have multiple, you have to click one by one. You can't select multiple and do that. So you click one, and it will come and run under that one. Now you notice it says no run here. It says type manual because it's a manual test case, and that's what you want, and it says no run. Okay, so you haven't ran anything yet because you just created a test set. That's all. All right, so let's see how we can run this thing. Is everybody clear so far? Okay, it's not a rocket science. Okay, as long as you can follow and create few, you should be clear. Okay, so I'm going to run the. If you have, there are two ways to run it, okay? You can run individually. If you have multiple, you can just click on run, okay? That will run one at a time. Now, when you want to run typically all the functionality test cases together, you just want to click on run test set. So it will run the first one, then second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, whatever you want. So here, I'm just going to click on run test set. Essentially, both does the same thing. One, you have to execute one by one yourself. Second one, it will automatically go to the next one. Alright. It's going to pop up this type of dialog box. Okay. Now don't ask me why it didn't start running, because that's how the software works. Okay. It's still not running. It just pops up another dialog box which tells you some more information. Who is the tester? What is the test set name, login functionality test case, status is not complete, just some information. But you have to click on these top buttons to actually start running the test cases, test set. Okay. Now a couple of buttons are very important here. The square button, end run. If you don't click on that end run button, it's not going to save your results. Okay. So once you start running, you're still going to have this button available. So make sure once you are at the end, let's go through the process. So I'm going to say click begin run. It's going to pull my 2 steps basically. Because this test case has 2 steps. And it tells me the instructions here. So you can create yourself, and if somebody else wants to run it, they should be able to follow the instruction. Okay, that's the whole goal here. Hopefully I can follow Dilip's instruction, I think. This is wrote by Dilip. So let's see. In the browser window, so there is no URL here, right? So I basically, but I think there was a URL somewhere else in there. I probably missed it. There you go. Now I can add the URL here. Okay. One thing that happens is it is available only in this run. So after, it's not going to update your test case. What I'm trying to say is, if you modify anything during the run, it's not going to go and update your test case. So if you run that again, this URL is gone. Okay? So if you want to change your test case, make sure you go back to the test line and modify your test case. Right? So let's just put this guy in. Now you guys did the actual testing, right? So what is the testing that you do? So you're gonna copy, paste, follow your own instructions. It says open up a browser and type in the URL, right? So I'm gonna go follow my own instruction. And I'll see if I can get in there. So let's see if the page comes up. Otherwise our smoke testing will not work. Alright, the good page came up. So now notice you have the actual results available. Actual. You have expected and you have actual. Make sure you put in the actual because this is gonna be lifesaver, okay? If you don't put actual here and you're gonna keep on passing, then people will think you never did any testing. Okay? Yeah, because this is a common mistake a lot of people do. You have to have actual test case results. So here what you can do is home page is displayed basically, and you're gonna the next step would be to pass or fail basically the test step. So passing or failing is at each step level. Okay. So here you can do two ways. There are some buttons available at the top. Okay. So this one is add step. You can add a step, but again, it's not going to be saved back to your original test case. So don't change it here. But this green button, it says pass selected, and this one says fail selected. All right. So basically, let's see. It says delete step, so you can delete the step as well. Or you can change it from here. Pass, fail, not complete, whatever you need to do. We typically do here, so that it automatically goes to the next step. So I go and pass the selected, so it came up. So it went to the next one. Now I have instructions here. And let's see, whatever instructions we have, as training and training. So I'm going to type in as training. Now if you already had a precondition, right, that you are already on that page, you're not going to put in all the steps there. So make sure you are already on that page and then start running the test case. So that's why this precondition is important. Alright, so it says welcome John. Super user logged in successfully. Okay, so I'm going to record super user logged in successfully. And I'm going to pass that again. And both steps passed. Now last thing that I mentioned, don't forget to click on this button. Okay, otherwise nothing is saved. So this is what I'm going to do. It says end run, and I'm going to do end run. You want to save the changes to test planning? Yeah, why not? The URL that I added is going to prompt you. Alright, so it's going to refresh the screen, come back here, and it will say passed. Okay. Now if I go back to my requirement, it will say, yep, coverage is good, and this requirement was validated with this one. If you just add only one test case. But if you add 5, then it will say different thing. Okay, so that's basically running the test case. Let's go and execute one more time. I'm going to go over one more item. Alright, so I'm going to run, this time I'm going to run one only, that particular one. And we're going to go quickly, begin run. But let's say the home page doesn't come up, right? Then what you do next? What is the logical step for you guys? Okay, so I'm going to say home page is not coming up, right? And for you as a tester, you have to create a defect, basically. Why this home page is not coming up, and you need to provide that information. The good thing is that right when the step is selected, you can fail this guy, okay, because it failed for me. And I can create a defect right from this particular screen. Okay. So I can create, this is a new defect basically. So I'm going to go and click on that. again, the defect, right? More information you can provide for somebody to troubleshoot, which is, it is better. Now, the advantage of creating a defect right from there is it's going to pull a lot of information, whatever information you had in the test tab and test kit, right there. See, it already pulled up. I didn't even type in anything over there. Okay. It says home page is not coming up. Now, another thing, most of the time you're going to end up doing is taking a screenshot of the error and putting that in. Alright, so where you can take the screenshot, there is another free tool. It's on everybody's machine. It's called snipping tool. Okay, this is a very handy tool. You can click on that, open that up, and you click on new, and you just take a screenshot right there. Okay, and you can save it to your machine. Say login error. And it goes in the pictures. Okay, make sure you know where to find it. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go and attach, and it says login error JPEG file. It will upload it and put it, stick it in right there. Okay. It says, and you can put in some description around it. And click OK. Alright, now it says all the fields are required, so I'll say login error, and here it's going to ask you for the severity. Okay, so this is obviously you can't perform any testing without this particular step is fixed. So it's going to be very urgent. I'm going to go with the urgent one and let the developers figure it out. Okay. So that one is there. I still have to click this button, okay? Make sure you don't end run. And it says fail at this time. The good thing is that it shows at the bottom automatically. It's going to pull up and show different things there. What basically and everything. Now the defect is gone, right? What if you have to modify it? So there is another tab which is called defects. Okay, so all the defects going to end up over there. So you can see, or developers can see what things are there. So let's see if I can pull this up, which your defect is there. I think this one is attachment. And it says created by Herschel, it's urgent, and I can see it, okay, what it is, it's a login error right there. So you can double click there and it's going to pop up the login error screen so that they can troubleshoot and fix it, I guess. Okay. The good thing is here, there is one more thing here. Go back to the detail. The assign to, right? How does the developer know what defects? So when you are creating a defect, you can assign to whoever is available. So I can go and pick Akshata, she is a developer. And so it sends email in the real world. Okay? And so then that's how they get notified, developers. Typically, I mean, you have the weekly meetings or maybe daily meetings, 15-minute stand-up, if you are working on agile projects. And you go over these defects and say who is working on what. And you just pick out the people. And then go and change it here. This guy is working on this one. Alright. Does it make sense? I mean, this is the overall life cycle, end to end. Any question? If not, then let's get started working on this one. The login, your first name, or whatever is on that card, okay? And password is training, okay? Let's give it a shot for the first one. Yeah, well, not requirement. You guys are not going to create any requirement, okay? All you're going to do is work with the testing side of things. So don't create requirements, but feel free to look at the requirements model. No, you never going to create requirements as a tester.
We are not talking about creating requirements.
Yeah, you can.
Requirements which you use to create anyone. We can take any requirement to type the test case.
So the test cases you created, all the requirements are there, okay, for your test case. So, so all the 6 ones that we assigned, all the requirements are in the tool. You just need to pick from the folder.
What you can do it is, to start with it, right, just use the same test case that we did for the login here.
Yep.
Just create it under your user folder, get used to that entire life cycle, make sure it's running, and then dive into your test case.